Okay, so we'll start off the clinic with just doing 8 slides of a PowerPoint just to kind of go over the differences between the AF 9 versus the 10 versus the 11, because we have all different ones here and there are some differences in there. If you guys have questions, just ask them throughout the clinic just so that there is some good interaction on it. And if we don't know the answer, that's why we have Raheem and Chad at the back. They should be able to answer the question for us. So starting with the PowerPoint here, first thing here, obviously we are now running up to 775 horsepower on the AF11. So the AF10 and 11 are running a 16 liter. The AF9 is still running the 13 liter. The AF11 has a dual rotor, and the AF9 and 10 are single rotor as well. So the differences there on the single rotor, the 9 and 10, is we now, instead of on the flagship combines, we always had 4 modules. We now have 6 modules. So we have 2 in the threshing, 4 in the separation. So they're the same modules or concaves that you presently have for all your flagship combines. There's just 2 extra in there. That means that our rotor now is 40 inches longer on the single rotor combines. We still drive it by the CVT driven rotors as well on the 9, 10, and 11. They're all CVT driven, as well as the feeder house. We've changed the way we drive the feeder house. We no longer drive it on the left-hand side of the combine. It's driven on the right-hand side. Also, residue management at the back. You'll notice if anybody demoed the combine last year or when we're doing our walk-around, we have the option for an internal chopper or a high hood mount chopper. This one has the internal chopper on it, so it's going to be identical to what you guys have ran in the past on your 60 series combines or 50 series or 40. When we get down after the chopper, underneath we have our spreaders. That's where our residue management comes in, or our automation of spreading on the bottom. So we have radar sensors there where we can sense how far we're throwing it. And you can enter in, if you guys want to only throw it 40 feet, you can set to only throw 40 feet. And then as you turn around, it's going to adjust it for the crosswind. At no point are we measuring wind on the combine. We're doing it just by the radar sensors, no different than your sprayers. For your height control, it's measuring how far it's throwing it out, and it's also measuring the speed that it's coming out. To accommodate that, what they're doing is they're speeding up one side versus slowing down the other to accommodate for crosswinds. We have the option of tires or tracks. I don't know if anybody in here had tracks. I think North Battleford sold some with tracks, but I don't know if they're here, so that is an option. We also, inside the cab, you'll notice that we do have dual 1200 displays. So the 60 series also has that. All the AF combines have dual 1200 displays. With that, we can remote in remotely from any of our service departments can remote in, any of the product specialists can remote in to help you through it. Also, we can only remote into the one on the right-hand side armrest. We can't remote into the upper one. The upper one on the right-hand side, all it's really doing is you're doing your guidance and your cameras are up there. Difference with the 1200 in these combines compared to your 700s that you've seen before is the grain camera actually takes a picture of what you're seeing in the actual grain elevator. So on the 700s, you all had grain cameras with automation in there to help out with automation, but you can never see a picture. Now on the 1200, you're actually going to see a picture of what the grain looks like going through there. Automation is still the same on the 9, 10, and 11. We still only do the 7 crops of full automation on there, and we still do not control the concave clearance. That is still, with automation on the 9, 10, and 11, that is still inputted by you, the customer. Any questions on anything on this slide? So a comparison here of between the AF10 versus the 9260, you can see that we have 33% more in load capacity, 27% more horsepower, and more cleaning and separating area. And also we have a wider feeder house and larger grain tank. So this slide right here shows us all the differences comparing the 9, 10, and 11 to the 9260. So as you can see, the 9 with the same engine as the 9260, there's your horsepower, 634. That's the 13 liter. 10 and 11, we move up to the 16 liter, and that's where we get the higher horsepower. But the 11 is a dual rotor. If you look here, your rotor length, we went from where we were about 103 inches, now up to 144 inches. So those are those 2 extra modules there. Cleaning area, obviously we increased that quite a bit here by about 3,500 all the way across. So the combines are identical. So if we took the AF11 off of that side panel there and you looked at it, you wouldn't know the difference if it was a 9, 10, or 11, because the only real difference is it a single rotor, dual rotor, and if it's a 9, it has a smaller engine. The cleaning fan, they also increased by 2 inches on diameter, and lift capacity as well. They increased it as well. If you went to the high one, you go up to 15,000 lift capacity. Grain tank as well. If you're seeing that we got 2 different options, it's just there's 2 different grain tank options, and I believe the difference between the 2, if you have the smaller one, you have only a 4.5 bushel unload rate. If you have the big one, you can go between 3 bushels or 6 bushels a second. The feeder house. So this is where they change quite a bit. Like I said, we drive it now on the right-hand side all the way down through the bottom shaft and then back up. That's how the drive comes down. Still CVT driven, but what we have now at the very top, and it's kind of hard to see, it's right here, there's a better slide coming up. This is our synchronized feed roller right here. So we kind of got rid of the transition cone and we have a feed roller at the top there. That's working as a feed roller to put it into the rotors, and also as your rock trap beater. Okay. Also on here, we have the option for the rock trap to be automatic. So if you bought the option, it's inside your 1200 where you can dump the rock trap from inside the combine. Also, if you have that, you can also manually open it from the outside. If you don't have that option, you only have the manual option for dumping it from the outside. If you do open it up, there is now a sensor. So if it's manual or automatic, if it's open, it tells you that it's actually open. So that's on all of them. Inside the feeder house as well, it's 4.5 inches wider now across all the combines, and it has a new locking mechanism at the bottom. So you'll see in the Walkaround, there's pins that actually come out at the bottom now. So if you guys are trying to hook this up to older pickup headers or an older FD2, you're going to have to get the brackets to put on those units to make this combine work with it. Okay, so FD2s, it bolts on. There's a bracket that bolts on. The 3016s, it's actually a weldment bracket that gets welded onto the 3016 so that you don't have no longer those clips that clip on like this. It's actually pins that push out. So you have to weld on a bracket that has a hole in it. We do have the part number here, and I think the salesmen have ordered the ones they need to accommodate the guys that needed that. Anything else on the feeder house? Like I said, it's still CVT driven, but if we do hook it up to a FD2, what does it lock it out at? Does it allow you to adjust your feeder house speed, or can you still move it? Anybody? As soon as you put on an FD2, it locks your speed just like it did on your 60 series to 570 RPM. The reason you don't have a CVT driven or ability to adjust your speed of your feeder house when you have an FD2 on there, because if you speed it up past 570, you overspeed your knife and you can break your knife head. So the only time you can adjust the speed of your feeder house is when you have your 3016 pickup on it. They put a stainless steel floor in here as well, which is different, and they changed where the lateral tilt is pivoted. It's pivoted at the bottom now, not on the top. And there's 2 hydraulic cylinders for pivoting your lateral tilt on here as well. Questions on the feeder house? Threshing system. So with the AF11, like what we're going to do the walk around on today, the modules are quite a bit skinnier. There's 3 in the threshing area, but this is what they look like. And for everybody else running 9s and 10s, they're identical to what you have here. So anything you have sitting at the farm right now will work, and you can put them in there. On the 11, for anybody who's bought an 11, there's a right and a left-hand rotor because we're twin rotor. So you can't pull one from the threshing system or from the threshing modules, won't work in the separation area. But they will work left to right on the AF11. So you can take one from the left hand and put it on the right-hand side on the AF11. But on the 9 and 10, like everybody knows, they're stamped rights and lefts. So they're the same where you have to put them in on the correct side. With that as well, you can see here, hopefully, that we have 40 standard RAS bars, and then we go up to 8 HX RAS bars, and then 12 spiked. To kind of show you that, why that's important, so we have a common one right here. So that's what there's 40 of them right there. There is that's just what it looks like. That is a common one or a standard, right? And then we move to the 8 that are the HX. So this guy right here, it's a little bit taller. Why I'm telling you this is there's 8 of these only. So there is a map in the ops manual, or we should have one available at the dealership. So when you guys do put what they call a non-compressible object through the combine, which will probably happen, we need to know when we're replacing these, which ones we replace, right? Because they do go in a certain area. So this one is actually taller than the common one. And why that is in the rotor cage now, it's a stepped rotor cage. So in the threshing area, it's 2 inches smaller. And when it gets into the separation area, it's 2 inches wider, that rotor cage. So that's why those HX ones are in the mid area in between the threshing and the separation. And that's the same on the 9, 10, and 11. Then at the rear, you just have the spiked RAS bar, which we've kind of had on all the combines as well. There's just a spiked one. Okay? So if you are getting parts for the season, just make sure that you have one of each, or if you are going to parts and asking them, just be aware that there's 3 different type of RAS bars on all the combines. And if you are putting them in there, make sure you're putting them in there in the correct spot. Cleaning system. We have a grain pan still. We no longer have a pre-sieve on the 9, 10, and 11. Okay? The pre-sieve is no longer. So this is what we call our primary upper sieve. This is our secondary upper sieve. And then we have a primary lower sieve and a secondary lower sieve. Also, we have 2 clean grain augers now. Okay, so with the 2 clean grain augers, one is pulling only from the primary sieve and one is only pulling from the secondary sieve. And they changed the way the flighting goes, so the flighting's actually reversed on it. So it's pulling the grain away from the cleaning fan, moving it to the back end of the combine. So the reason why we did that, anybody have an idea? By turning them backwards, we're taking the product away from the cleaning fan and moving it to the back, so we shouldn't overload our fan anymore. Because I'm sure everybody in here with a 60 series or a 40 or a 50 have done that. So there's 2 clean grain, and this is across the 9, 10, and 11s, moving everything to the back and bringing it across to the clean grain elevator. So that's a change as well. The fan is obviously 2 inches bigger in diameter, still a squirrel cage. It's not a paddle fan. The grain pan here now, it's kind of hard to see in here, but it is tilted up on the outside. Here and here, there's almost, I don't know what you want to call them, ski slopes there. So it's bringing the product to the center of your grain pan. What that's designed to do is that it loads up everything evenly on there, no different than your air carts. Obviously, we have the most amount of air pressure always down the center of your air cart when you're seating, right? So we have the most amount of air velocity coming down the center of the combine as well. So that's why they're loading the center of it. But a difference here now is on the 60 series and prior, the grain pan and the sieve worked in unison. Now they're independent. we no longer have a self-leveling shoe in there, like all the way from the 8010 and all the way up. What we're doing is we have a positive and negative shake that's independent on the grain pan versus the sieves with 13 degrees of slope there. So it's just changing the way it is shaking, right or left, so it loads up everything properly. So in automation, it's going to notice from your sieve loss, your pressure sensors, you have 2 pressure sensors now on the top and 2 on the lower for your sieve pressure. So it's going to be sensing where if it overloaded on the right versus the left, and it's going to adjust how it's shaking either the grain pan to have even loading or change the way it shakes the sieve so it's loading up everything evenly. Also on the back of the 9, 10, and 11, you guys now have split sieve loss sensors. So there's a sieve loss sensor for the right and a sieve loss sensor for the left, which works into automation as well. Because if we know that we're throwing out a whole bunch on the right-hand side, we're obviously overloading the right hand more and we're having grain loss. So then it's going to make the adjustments on there. Where on the 60 and prior, we only had a single sieve loss sensor at the back. So now it's split across all the combines. Cleaning system, this is the underneath. I fully haven't wrapped my head around how it does the positive negative shake yet. I need to look into it more. But on the right-hand side of the combine, we'll show it in the walk-around, or we can look at it as through the brakes. But it just changes the way it's shaking, no longer self-leveling. This is the last slide before we get into the walk-around. So how many people in here run a 50 series sprayer or an AFS Connect stagger? Okay, what happens when you open up the door of either one of those things? What do you hear? Yeah, you hear a click, right? There's a relay click, right? And what that relay is doing on those units, it's firing up your body control module to let everything fire up and go to work, okay? The combine doesn't have that, okay? So the reason for this slide, here's the key switch in the cab. If you turn the key switch backwards, if you want to start it, if you turn it backwards, you fire up the BCM and then you can start the unit. If you jump into the unit and you just crank it over like you have always before, the unit's not going to start. There's no power there yet. So you have to turn it backwards first to start it, okay? But what happens if we're on the outside of the combine and we don't walk up into the cab and we want to maybe open or close our sieves or open up the back end of the combine? Well, on the back left-hand side of the combine, we have this keypad that will go through, but there's a switch right here. So if you don't want to walk up into the cab to turn your key on to power up the unit, if you hold this switch up for more than 1 second, does the exact same thing. It fires up the body control module and allows power to get to everything, so then we can run everything on this keypad. And this keypad will go through it on the walk-around, but you can do everything at the back end of the combine. The last one right here that's covered up on this keypad, I seem to miss this on every walk-around we've done so far. This right here is a battery disconnect, but it's not designed to be used like we have in the past where you shut it off every night. That's long-term storage. So if you're doing something for longer than 7 days, turn that off. Okay, any questions on anything before we get into the walk-around? Okay, then I'll pass it off to Quentin here.
All right, so Bryce went through a lot of the changes with this, so we're just going to touch up on what he went through. So right-hand side, the CV shaft that he was talking, right along here, which is going down and running our gearbox down here. Coming over to our rock trap, new rock trap, 2 different options. There's a manual and an automatic within the cab. If you have the automatic, you can go to procedures, rock trap procedure, and it'll dump it, slam it 3 times, and close by itself. If you want to do it manually, you key off. You get a 27 mil wrench that Connor has here. Go onto the hex lug, push it down, it'll engage the trap, and push it back up to close it back up. And he'll do this for you. And then you can see below that the trap is opened. Wrench back on it and close it. And when you close it, you'll feel it tightening up. until the point of where the cam activates, and then you got to go a little further. Another spot to point out is our new lockout. So this is the new cylinder lockout. Does both sides. Coming around to the front of the feeder house, we were going through, we have on standard tilting faceplate and lateral tilt on all models now. Stainless steel floor that Bryce mentioned. And now we're back to the metal slats, no longer a cast slat. So if these bend, we recommend taking it off, running without it for the time being until you can get one replaced. So a good thing to check. This would be your main pivot point that he was pointing out within the presentation. One cylinder on each side pivots off this main center point. That's how we're gaining our lateral tilt. Moving over, we have hydraulic connections and electrical. So if you look on this one right here, there's actually a pushed-in O-ring. This is caused from connecting the hydraulics while the unit's running. We never recommend doing that. Always shut the unit off, go into the cab, shut it off, come back out, and hook it up cold. Same for the electrical. Just to make sure that the header integrates and everything is detected, plug it when it's turned off. So for our new locking system that Bryce was explaining, these are the pins. So if I go to the remote, not the remote, but the engagement handle, we lift up, and then it comes across, and the pin closes and opens. Coming across from the other side of our gearbox, running a shaft to the slip clutch, has an oil level for your indicating where it has to be to check the oil. We have our drum position right here. There's 7 positions. We usually run in number 3, but there's 3, 5, they're in odd numbers, and in between it would be the evens. Right next to that, we have our feeder tensioning chain. This one is a production model, so it doesn't have the sleeve that would normally be covering the spring, so it doesn't allow you to over tighten it. Tighten it up to the, sleeve, and then that'll stop it from going any further. And then on this one has a gauge. You can tighten it up to here, which shows that it's in spec. Coming over to the belt, this is what's driving our de-slug procedure. So we follow the belt up to here. You notice we do have a tensioner, so we can't feather on and off on the de-slug like we used to. This does have a tensioner, takes a second or two for it to gain tension in reverse, so we can't feather it back and forth. We have an automatic de-slug procedure for the rotor and the feeder house in the monitor, which I'll show you later, or one for just the feeder house itself. And then coming to the front, I missed something, Connor. What did we miss, buddy? Oh yes, synchronized feed system up top here. So this is we no longer have a transition cone right from the SFS with the integrated, rock beater all in there. And then rotors directly behind it, which will be touched up on Connor here. And I think that's about everything, unless you wanted to add something, Bryce. Pass it off to Connor.
So moving over here to the left side of the combine, a thing we like to preach on pretty much at every clinic is always be checking your guys' torques on your wheels here. No matter what kind of wheel and tire combo you guys have, just make sure you guys are checking these, because obviously we've all seen combines laying on their side there with their bolts broken off there. So just a common thing to check. Make sure you guys don't have any stretched bolts in there, and should be good to go then. So moving up here, previous to our flagships too as well. So we'll have our washer tank and then our cab air filter there as well. And then talking about our rotors here. So kind of how Bryce was mentioned there, we'll have 2 on these AF11s. We have our 2 rotors here. So we'll have both of them at that 24 inch by 142 inch in length. And then obviously for our 9s and our 10s, they're just a single and a little bit wider and longer as well in diameter. On these rotors, we no longer have any grease points. If you guys get a chance to come and take a look up at the front there, you're not going to have a rotor bearing grease nipple or a grease line going towards there anymore. It's going to be a fully sealed bearing on both sides there. So just letting you guys know that it's a fully sealed bearing and no longer grease nipples coming in there. talking about the rotors themselves here. So as you guys seen in the slide there, we're going to have all different RAS bars going throughout the rotors here. So we'll have those 40 of our common non-spike RAS bars, and then we'll have our eight X's of those 8 of them there. And then we'll have 12 of our spiked RAS bars in the back as well. And with that map, you guys just want to make sure if you guys do lose one or replacing them, you guys do want to be able to put them in the right spot, just because they do have a certain spot for each of them as well. On these concaves here, so you'll notice that we have our 3 threshing ones up front, and then we'll have our 6 in the back there. You guys can change these from left to right, but like Bryce said, you guys can't change them from front to back as well, just because obviously our threshing ones in the back, or threshing ones in the front, aren't going to fit our ones in the back for our separating there. These ones up in our front here, they are the smaller size there, so we'll have our small wire and then our large wires in the back there. This is kind of standard coming with these AF11s here, and obviously you guys can change these throughout as well. Kind of how we were talking about that SFS, or synchronized feed system there. When we go into an auto deslug there, what it's going to be doing is going to be pretty much putting that rotor into first gear, lowering our concaves to match our rotor cage here, so we don't have a step up or a step down, and it's going to be putting our rotor into reverse there, and then throwing all the product out the back there. One thing we do like to mention on these rotors as well, there's no longer, if we want to come over here, you'll see we no longer have that gear shifter selector anymore as well. This is all through in the cab there, so you guys can change them right through the cab. You don't have to no longer come out here and shake that linkage there and try to get it back into gear as well. Moving over here, we'll see we have our 2 rotor loss sensors, same as our flagships as well. So same calibration. You guys can go on there and we can kind of show you through it when we do the sieve loss calibration as well. It's the same procedure as that as well. Coming up here, we'll kind of talk about our unloading auger here a little bit. So we'll have our gearbox here, our main drive belt here, and you'll notice we have these shear bolts here. So that's for this bolt here. And then also for another set of shear bolts, we do have them there. And then our shear bolt there. So then you'll see up for our unloading auger as well. With these unloading augers, they are an 18-inch in diameter, and they do come in different lengths just to kind of specify for each MacDon header. So we do have a 45-foot, a 50-foot, and then also a 61-foot as well. And then kind of touching up in our grain tank there as well. So we do have our cross augers if you guys have the high flow option as well. So we're going to have a 3 bushel a second and then the 6 bushel a second. If you guys didn't have that, it would be that 4.5 bushel a second as well. Kind of last thing I'll touch up here before we kind of get into the cleaning system here. So we have our main air filter here. Pretty nice option on these AFs just because it's no longer up at top there collecting all the chaff and everything. It seems like last year when we ran these guys stayed really, really clean and kind of did a better job for getting a lot cleaner air coming in and able to come down here and check it more than going up on the ladder and checking it as well. Is there any kind of questions you guys have about the threshing there as well before we kind of get into our sieves at all? So we'll have, yeah, good question. We'll have 11 electronically controlled vanes on our rotor cage there that it's going to work with automation, and there's 4 different styles for each one. So they're going to have total of 11 on top of a rotor cage there too. Perfect. Okay, we'll give it to Bryce here, and you can kind of talk a little bit about our cleaning here and our grain pan.
So on the cleaning system, like I did say in the PowerPoint, we have our grain pan up front here that runs about to right about here where my pointer is on the side of the combine. And after that, we have our primary upper sieve and our secondary upper sieve. What is different on all previous models of Case IH combines on the flagship, this right here, from these bolts down, everything tilted left and right for the self-leveling shoe. Now, like I said, we don't have that. We have the positive negative shake of the grain pan independently from the sieves. So on the grain pan underneath, which way do the rotors turn on on a single rotor combine. If you're sitting in the seat or standing behind, single rotor combine. Clockwise or counterclockwise? Pardon? Clockwise on a single rotor, okay? And on a dual rotor, which way do they turn, left and right? I see someone doing the math, trying to figure it out back there. So the left-hand rotor on a single or on a double or on a dual rotor turns which way? Clockwise or counter? Left one turns clockwise, is that correct? Yeah, so the way it happens is dumps everything in the center of, as they're turning, they're dumping everything in the center on the rotors. Onto the grain pan, so the grain pan is shaking and also compensating for side load. It's bringing it back to our no longer pre-sieve and then taking it back to our secondary top sieve. On the left-hand side of the combine now, we have our return, which if you ever ran New Holland combines, this looks very familiar. On all the flagships, we used to have the tri-sweep processor, which is located on the right-hand side. Now our returns are happening on the left-hand side. So with that, now we have what this is right here. I don't know, I'm sure they can all see this. So we have this plate now that goes on the bottom. Obviously this one is spiked right here, and there's a smooth one. So depending on the crop you're doing, you can change this. So where this is located, comes your auger, return auger's coming across, feeding it in to this area on the bottom. It's being threshed out a little bit more, then the auger's bringing it up through the return. And is it returning into the rotor or to the grain pan? Pardon? It goes to the grain pan, it doesn't go to the rotor. So again, like always, if we're having high returns, we should probably fix the problem in the rotor and not rely on the return to do anything. So this right here, if it's kind of hard to get the camera down, but obviously right down here at the very bottom of the combine, in behind, we'd have to almost get on our hands and knees, go down there and slide this in there. And you're going to change this depending on what crop you're doing. So there should be a smooth one already on the unit. As the returns come up, goes into this area right here. There's two paddles now, throwing it onto the grain pan. If you notice, one paddle is stationary, and this one right here, I can move it. So that gives us one more threshing attempt as well. So that is going to hammer it a little bit more. Also, by how much it's actually swinging and hitting, there's a gauge on the top or a sensor. That's what's reading your returns in the cab on your monitor, is by how much that's actually flexing in there. So that's the return system. Down underneath, like I said, we have two clean grain augers now, one running off of the primary, one running off of the secondary, taking it across to the right-hand side of the combine. What are we missing on the side of the combine right here that all 60 series had and prior 8010s? Pardon? Anybody? Battery. The batteries aren't located here anymore, okay? So you're not going to find them on the left-hand side. They're hidden on the right-hand side of the combine. Once we get around there, we'll show you. So nothing here. There is very few grease nipples on the combine, but there is one located down here. Moving back, and we're going to move up here. This unit right now has the internal chopper, so the same chopper that you guys have presently ran, unless you ran a Redicop chopper before. But now up top here we have electronic shift, so we can shift our chopper now from the cab, from the Pro 1200 into lower high, and that is located right here. And also you notice that there is right here are where we put our stationary knives in and out as well. There's no more handle to put them in or out. It's done through the monitor as well. Moving down to this area right here, we have a single drain now coming down from the engine compartment all the way down to the bottom, where we have gate valves on, so we can pick what we're draining. If we're draining our CVT gearbox or engine gearbox or coolant or anything, it's all coming down through the same drain hose on the left-hand side. Moving further back, I'm going to get Quinton to change something in the monitor. So like we've had on all our combines in the past, or if you were at the 60 series clinic the other day, we can test our sieve loss and rotor loss sensors in the monitor, right? By tapping on them, it honks the horn. So in the monitor, which we'll show you where to get to a little bit later, you go into a procedures and you can say, I want to test my sieve loss or my rotor loss sensors. Then if you hammer on them with something, sometimes you need keys or a little piece of metal, it'll actually honk the horn so you know that they're actually working. So I'm just going to use this little rod that holds that return door on, and I'm going to tap on the sensor here and it should honk the horn. So now we know that the left-hand sensor, sieve loss sensor, actually works, and the monitor says left-hand sensor. So it recognizes that the left one is hit as well. So you know if maybe someone screwed up the wiring on it as well. Okay, so you could plug the left into the right or the right into the left, but this is testing that the correct one is working when you're tapping on it. Okay, and you can do that for your rotor loss sensors as well. No different than any of the combines in the past, we should calibrate our sieves every year. And the same guy, if you have multiple combines, should do it across the fleet. Okay, so to calibrate the sieves, what we need to do is we go into calibration mode in the monitor, which we'll show you a little bit later. But we open the sieves up completely, and then we close them all the way down. And then we reopen them just so we can put something that is 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters in there. Okay, if we go past and we get to 8 millimeters, don't bring it back down. Open it up completely, bring it all the way down, and then open it up again just to get rid of the linkage, the slop in the linkage. Okay, with doing that as well, if you guys do have something plastic to do it with, is a lot better than doing metal. Reason for that is when you drop the plastic one in there, you don't have to go searching for it. Turn on the combine, it comes out the back end, right? If you dump something, if you have a piece of metal in there, you're going to be digging in the combine trying to figure out where it is so you don't wreck something. Okay? But you have to calibrate all 4 sieves. They all have to be calibrated. Also with the sieves, like I said in the PowerPoint, on the primary and the secondary upper sieve, if you are opening them up, they're going to open up to the same opening. So let's say you had them both set to 10 millimeters and you want to close down the front one. We'll show you in the monitor where you can actually put an offset in there, up to 8 millimeters offset, I believe. Correct, Raheem? 8 millimeter offset in between front and rear? Yeah. So you can have that, so you could have your one closed tighter or open more than the other on the primary and the secondary sieves. Upper and lower as well. So moving back, we get into our keypad at the back, like I touched on. These lights right here, obviously we have our sieve light, our under the panel lighting, and our engine light. This button right here is only going to be used if you have the high hood mount chopper. So that is the chopper that this one does not have. So how many people have the high hood mount chopper? Crohn's do, and does anybody else? PA has one. So this is going to work with your guys' chopper, this button right here, but on this combine it's going to do nothing. Okay. Moving down, this button right here, if I press on it and I would hit my button open here, it is a one-time open. It's going to go, I can't stop it. It's going to open up the whole back end of the combine, so anything that comes off the rotor goes on the ground. So it's no different than that manual hood that you had before that you opened up. Everything that comes off the rotor is going to go on the ground. You can't stop it. It's either open or closed because you would never want that halfway opened. You either want it fully open or fully closed. Okay. Moving down, this one right here, if we press on it, this one now, I can open up the back end of the combine so I could get in there and work. But if I take my finger off, it actually stops. So that one right there, that's taking your spreaders and opening them up so you guys can get in the back end of the combine. Then a couple new buttons that are kind of handy. This one right here, we can put our rotor into neutral from outside. So if we wanted to spin our rotor over, let's say we did put a rock through here and we had to spin it over manually, we don't have to go to the cab to shift it into neutral. By pressing this, what it'll do is it'll throw our rotor into neutral. So now we can actually spin it over from the outside. It will not put it back into gear. So if you do put it into neutral at the back end of the combine, you have to go into the monitor and select it and put it back into gear. Moving down, same thing. This is our chopper. So if we press this button from the rear of the combine on the keypad, it'll put your chopper into neutral, but it will not put it back into low or high. It's just for service. If you're out here, you can actually do this, so you can put it in neutral so you can turn it. Next button over. This would adjust your upper sieve if it's lit up now, and we can open or close our upper sieve. But the only one it's opening on the upper sieve is your rear one, your secondary. It's not opening and closing your primary. So when you're playing with this at the back, it's only going to be opening and closing your rear part of your top sieve. If you did the bottom sieve here, same thing. It's only going to do the rear part of it. It isn't going to do the front part. The next two buttons here and here, they're only going to be used for calibrations. So when you're calibrating it, you're going to press that. That way you can open and close your front and your rear to get everything set the same to your 6 millimeters. Then, like I said, this is the button you hit to turn on all your power to your body control module. And this one underneath the flap right here, this guy's only designed for long-term storage. Questions on anything that I went through on that panel? It's a little bit to learn the first time because you have to activate the button and then use the plus minus or the up down to make anything happen. There is a good picture in the ops manual on what everything does on it. But just be aware that not all the buttons might not work because it depends on what chopper you actually have. If someone's sitting in the seat and the seat switch is depressed, nothing works back here. Okay? So that's something I learned this morning. Thanks, Raheem. Okay, so talking about our spreaders now. Right here we have this white sensor right here. This is your radar sensor. So this is what's measuring how far the crop is being thrown out and the speed that it's coming out at. No different than your auto boom sensors on your sprayer. That's what it's doing. So like I said, you guys can have spreader automation. We used it last year on this unit. This is the one that we actually ran around and demoed out of Redhead. So if you put in that you want to spread 50 feet, it's going to try to obviously do 25 out each side. And it's going to speed up or slow down the impellers on the back, the spreaders at the back, to compensate for side wind. If you don't want to run spreader automation, you still have two other options. You can run it old school, which is manual, where you guys can speed up and slow down each one however you want. And maybe you guys think you can do a better job. That's still an option to do that. And the last one is GPS. So the GPS one is, let's say you were heading in the north direction and you had a crosswind. As soon as you turned around and headed south and re-engaged your GPS, it's going to slow down that one on the one side to the slowest speed and speed the other one up to the speed you had it at so that it compensates for the side wind. So you're basically doing your own audit. You're speeding them up and down separately until you find out that you're doing the right spread width. And then when you change directions, it's just swapping the speed from the right to the left every time you re-engage your GPS. Okay? So that's how the GPS one works with spreader automation. Moving to the back of the combine, you can see that this door is open now. We do have a dimple roller up in here. What that roller is designed to do is to turn to help feed the product out and bring it down. So if we were dropping all our straw or everything coming off our rotor, that everything falls out here and comes onto the ground. We still have the ability to shape how wide of a swath we want by moving these deflectors in or out to drop everything on the ground. So we still have the option that we can spread our chaff and drop our straw if you want. Moving around to this side. So this whole area inside of here, this is where all the magic is happening with the positive and negative shake of the grain pan and also the sieve. So this is the linkage in here that's helping control all of that here. Then we have our clean grain elevator, which is still located in the same place. Handles a lot more crop now. The difference is, you'll notice we no longer have the adjustment here to adjust our chain tension anymore, because we don't adjust the top of the clean grain elevator anymore. So on all flagship combines, we always had the threaded rod right here, which then pushed the top shaft up or down on the clean grain elevator. We now adjust it at the bottom. So there's an adjusting bolt down here that adjusts the chain tension. You're still adjusting it the same way as we always have. We're just doing it on the bottom. The reason for that is at the top of the clean grain elevator, you have your impact yield sensor. So when we were adjusting it at the top, we changed the way it was coming out of the clean grain elevator and going on to the impact sensor, which gave us a little bit of variance in our yield monitor. So now only adjusting the lower one, we're not changing the distance in between the clean grain elevator, where it's throwing it, onto the yield sensor anymore. So that's why we're adjusting it at the bottom. And on the inside of the clean grain elevator, just like we've always had, we obviously have our moisture sensor and auger on the inside, and we still have our grain cam as well. So the grain cam pulls out just like it has on all the 50 and 60 series. That's used for automation. You can see right here, if still have the pins here that we would pull out right here to get rid of the grain cam. It will tell you still in the 1200 if the camera lens is dirty. If it is dirty, pull it out, wipe it off with just a dry cloth, put it back in, but it does tell you in the monitor, like it has in the past, if it is dirty. And now with the 1200, you'll actually see a picture of your crop that's going through there, your grain in there, so you can see what it actually looks like and see that the camera's actually working. Moving back over here, we do have a hand tension right here. By pushing down on this, we can take the tension off of this belt. Then we can turn over our clean grain elevator and everything by hand. So just another service point right here. Moving up to this area, like Connor said before, when he did the unloading auger on the left-hand side of the combine, he said that we had the option to go between 3 and 6 bushels a second. So if you do have that option to do that, this is the hydraulic cylinder that is opening and closing to take the tension on the belt or take the tension off the belt to go in between 3 versus 6 bushels a second. If you don't have this belt on this side of the combine, it means that you ordered the combine with the 4.5 bushel unload rate. You can also see there's the drive shaft coming all the way down this side of the combine. This is only to drive the feeder house CVT. Moving around to the front. Behind this panel right here, this is where your batteries are going to be located on your 9, 10, and 11. Right here. So panel pops off, and then inside of there you're going to have 3 batteries. If you do pop the panel off today and you only see 2 batteries, it's because this is a pre-production unit and doesn't have all the pips done to it yet. So there is only 2 batteries in this one, but everybody else's would have 2 in there across all the units as well. Right here, this is where we have our booster pegs now located right up here. So no different than we had on the older flagship combines. We have booster pegs there so we can keep everything charged. How many fuse panels do we have on this combine? Anybody take a guess before I pass it off? Anybody know? There's 5 fuse panels now. So just be aware of that across the unit. So if you don't find the fuse you're looking for in the cab of the combine, there is 5 different fuse boxes located around the combine. Usually the fuse panels are going to be located right beside the controller, the UCM. So be aware of that you will find 5 different fuse panels moving across the combine. Other than that, I'm going to pass it off to Quinton. And
All right, guys, so starting out with the engine, we're going to start with the basic principle of it is moved 90 degrees, so it's no longer facing the side of the combine. It's going towards the rotors on the same incline that the rotor's at. So it has been moved, cooling fan's been moved. But we're going to start back here. Little blue cap, DEF fluid, and DEF module behind it. How was that? Can you hear me a little better? Hydraulic tank over here, where the pointer's at. Hydraulic fill and sight glass on the side. 750 hours on the change, Raheem. Yep. Coming over to this massive front end. This would be your PTO gearbox going across the back end. If we look right on the bottom, the sight glass for the PTO gearbox is right here. So that's where you're going to check the level. There is a sight glass as well to the left. It's hard to see, so we're not going to be able to see it here, but it's behind where the pointer stick's pointing at, and that's for your rotor gearbox. Going over to your right, get you down over here. We got engine oil dipstick in the green right here. Fuel filter maintenance on this engine is 600 hours. To the right here, we have our diesel fill and an air truck to clean everything off. Going forward, on the cooling side, we have a sight glass for our coolant, where the pointer stick's pointing, and another sight glass on the drive modules of the fans themselves, on the top right of the motors. So you'll notice the fans are facing the grain tank. We have 3 fans on this, and they have rotary screens on the other side with adjustable brushes. Throughout the life of it, if the brushes aren't contacting them, adjust them, get them a little closer. Moving on to the grain tank itself, 567 bushel. It has 5 grain sensors in the tank now with showing percentages. So I'll show you the percentage of how full you are on the monitor. And one thing Raheem pointed out is with this, the sample door is at the bottom 10% of the grain tank. So if you look behind you, the sample might be a little dirtier than you'd expect because it's sitting right at the bottom of the grain tank. And then in the grain tank itself, new Vector Pro receiver. It's the same receiver you would have on a new Steiger or a new sprayer, some new sprayers. It has the ability to have our subscriptions sent over the air, so we don't got to come out and install anything. It all go through the over the air. We can put a trial on for you for AFS 3 and get you connected that way. And on this model, folding power top. That's mostly everything for the engine. Is there anything that I should be adding, Craig, Bryce? Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break before we move on to the monitor, just to get the camera guy situated. So 10 minutes, we'll start back up. We'll go through the monitor. Start with a walkthrough on the Pro 1200 monitor. This is the primary monitor, so there is a secondary still in the cab that we don't have out, which is going to do the mapping, the guidance. We won't be showing that today. We're just going to go through the primary. So starting with a basic overview, top left-hand side, the regulatory symbols, click on that. That's going to give us a list of our active faults. You can hit clear all, you'll clear the faults. Any active faults will come back up. Moving to the right, this would be our GNSS signal. AFS 3 is on this combine, but of course we're in a building, so it's not going to show it. But this is where it's going to show what corrections you're connected to. Moving over to the right, this would be our PCM for our connectivity. So this should always say Rogers, and it'll give you your signal, but as long as this is connected, you should still be able to, we should still be able to remotely log in. Little 9 squares up to the top here, gallery, phone. 2 things I'm going to put out here is the gallery. If we take a screenshot, which I'm going to show later, this is where it's going to save, and the remote assistance services. So if we need to remotely work on your unit, update, configure something, we're going to ask you to go into the remote assistance services, request assistance. It's going to give you a code. You give that to us, and then we can get in. Going on to the little question symbol. This is where we can load in manuals. This combine doesn't have any manuals loaded into it, but we could put in the AF11 manual, we could put in the header manual, FD2, we could add everything in there. Moving over to the right, there's that little camera signal or symbol right above the AM. If we were to hold down on that, we can take a screenshot, and the screenshot would go into the gallery, or you can take a picture of your phone, either or. Little symbol here for the person, user profiles, you can set up multiple operators. Going over to the right, this is our harvest settings. So this is all of our automation settings, which we're gonna go through more in detail with Bryce. Moving over to the right, this is our business card menu. So this is where most of your settings are gonna be changed at. So we're gonna start with system. On the right-hand side, shows us our time. This is where our cameras would be and which cameras we have. Moving down, a lot of these we're not gonna go through in detail, but brightness, display. If we wanna change our units to USA, if they're stuck in millimeters, switch it to USA. Going down, if we go to CAN status, it's gonna show everything that's online. So maybe the grain camera's not working, you got something that isn't working properly, it's gonna be in this list and you'll be able to see if it's offline or if it's not detected. Moving down, we'll go to advanced. At the bottom here, I don't believe this has a software on it, but we do have the option to put a timer on for the combine. So if we get out of it, go in for lunch, we can come back in and the monitor will be in a standby mode so that the PCM's already loaded, GNSS signal will be loaded, and it's a really quick boot up, less than 20 seconds and you're back in. In system info, this will just go through the versions of what software you have if we do ask. Going back to the business card menu, we'll go over to the header. So this is going to be everything related to your header. So at the top we have FD2 in there, shows that it's a draper. And we can go down, header sensors. If we did have a header and sensor, we will make sure that's on installed. On your right hand side, this is where all the other adjustments are going to be. We're not going to go through everything because there is a lot of adjustments in here. And if we wanted to change it from non-inverted to inverted or vice versa, it's on basic tab right at the bottom. So pilot inverted would be similar to Pro 700s and the 9250s. Non-inverted would be up is up, down is down. Coming out of this menu, back to the business menu, go to the combine. Right-hand side, lots of tabs to go through. Again, we're not going to go through all of them, but serial number, basic info, speed ranges. So this will tell you your speed ranges for low or for high, and you can adjust them up and down. Feeder. So this would be for just telling the feeder what you're going to run at vehicle speed wise. Threshing. This is going to do the auto gear shift if you have it enabled, and we're going to tell it what concaves we have in there. And then cleaning info about sieves, grain handling, just lots of settings. Again, we're not going to go through all of them. Go to the bottom, light controls. So this is where you can turn on all the work lights, set them to a memory. Service gives you a little bit of info on your service, how many hours you're at, and where you are in relation to your next service. Back to the business card menu. Harvest settings, we're going to go more through when we get to Bryce's presentation. So we're going to go to procedures and calibrations. There's quite a few calibrations in here. There are quite a few that we recommend doing. One would be the feeder engagement, your sieves, concaves, all of those are going to be in here. Going to procedures, sieve loss sense test. This is the one that me and Bryce did. You hit start. It's going to ask you where to tap, tell you where to tap. You're going to tap on it and it's going to honk the horn. You can do that for the rotor loss. Rock trap is in here. So these would be all of our procedures, including the D-slugs. Going back to the business card menu, these would be for your yield and moisture sensors. So Bryce is going to touch up on the order of how we're going to calibrate those when we get to the automation side of things. Data, one thing I'm going to touch up on here is your crop filter lists. So if we click on data and go to the right hand side and go to crop type filter, we can get rid of all the crops that we don't use. So then when we're going through our automation and we're trying to pick the crop, all the stuff that we're never going to use won't show up, and it'll just be the crops that you use on your farm. Bryce has already pointed out we have 7 types of automation for both threshing and cleaning, but on this new unit, cleaning is going to apply to all crop types. And this is also where we'd do importing, exporting, and deleting. Going over, that was most of the, basically everything we're going to go through on the business card menu. Going over one, this is going to be our operations tab. So our grower farm field, everything in there. If we go down just a little bit, this is where we change our automation crop type. So right now we're on wheat durum. We can change it. And again, this is going to be based off our crop type filter list. So if we want it smaller, make it to whatever you run. Change to oats. It would still do the cleaning side, or we'll just stay on wheat. And then it's going to ask you your header name. If you go down, no, we don't need any other guidance. Left-hand side, basically the same as your Pro 700, very similar. There will be an A on the harvester itself if we're in automation. And indicators, these are our UDWs that we can customize. So if we hold down on any one of these run screens, we can go into edit layout mode. And all those little UDWs we see on the left can be changed, and you can add in whatever you want. There's a UDW for everything in here. Same thing for our main run screen pages. All those can be changed to where you like everything. If you want to name a tab, you click in on it while you're already selected, and then we can name it something, apply, and that's what the tab will now be named. Let's get out of it, hit the X. And mostly everything else you will be kind of accustomed to already with Steigers and such. One thing I will point through on the automation tabs is you can change the sieves by clicking on them. And we can change the range of what we want to go to, and you'll hear them change in the unit as opposed to changing them on the manual controls. Then we have veins at the top. It's going to show us where we are in relations to slow versus fast, or crop type. And in the ACS on this, I do want to point out that it will tell you on the advanced crop settings what plate that you should be running on your return, be it smooth or rough. But we'll get through to that when we talk about automation. So anything else you want me to touch up on, Bryce, before we head it over? Gotcha. So here, run screen 4, we have rotor gear control, chopper gear control, and spreading. So if we put it into auto, that's where it's going to be, what Bryce explained, off of the sensors in the back. And then GPS, we would have to enable it in a different side before it's going to allow us to hit GPS, and we would need to have a GPS signal. So chopper gear control, rotor gear control. If you put it into neutral in the back, this is where you're going to come to put it back into gear. Any questions about that, guys? Well, I'll pass it over to Bryce, and he will go through the automation side.
So like Quentin showed you, Pro 1200 screen, which is going to look a lot different than the 700 that you're used to. Obviously, we have all these readouts. Like he said, we can tap on them. The differences down here now is with automation. So the funnels are split like before. So anything here is going to be your rotor loss side. This is going to be cracks and brokens. This is going to be MOG. What does MOG stand for? Material other than grain. Is anything that isn't grain, like straw, chaff, anything else. And how is it reading that? It is reading it from that grain camera. Okay, so that's going to be that half. This right here is your tailings. Right here, that's where we adjust our automation on our tailings or return. And then this right here, one half of the funnel is going to be for one side of your sieve loss sensor and the other side versus right left. So like I said, they are split now, and like before, we're going to tap on these and increase or decrease the sensitivity for automation to work. Okay, we also have here this bar graph. If everybody doesn't know what it is, there's a little question mark we can tap on there, and that bar graph, that is going to tell you what your pressure sensor is doing on your sieves. So you always want it running in the center. If it's high, it means you're overloading it. If it's low, it means you are underloading it or there's blowholes in it. So with any automation combine, because not everybody in here only has AF combines, if you have a 50 series with automation and that bar graph right here on your Pro 700 is not really moving or you're not sure that it's working, go in and run that procedure. in procedures in the 700. You go in there, run it. What it does is it speeds up your cleaning fan, slows it down, opens and closes your sieves, and it reads the different pressures, and it sets a new benchmark. If you do that, that usually helps with automation. So that's another thing I would do every year. So Quentin went through the cards menu, calibrations here. Like I said, I would calibrate your concave opening every year. I would calibrate your sieves every year on the combine, just because that is something that goes out. Also, like I said at the 60 series clinic, if you guys engage your header on any of your case combines, because I've ran into this multiple times and it hammers when it engages, calibrate your feeder engagement clutch. Okay? It fixes it right away. So if it's hammering in, just come in and do a calibration on it, because sometimes that is missed. Procedures here. This is just like what Quentin talked about. This is our automatic deslug of the feeder. So we can come in here to deslug our feeder, or we can still do it off our right-hand side console like we have before. You still would pick up on the switch and pull it back. Then we have our automatic deslug of feeder and rotor. So what that's going to do is exactly that. It's going to automatically deslug the rotor and the feeder all as one, and it's a timed thing. It comes through and it steps you through everything on the screen. Kill stall, no different than we had in the 50 series before. If we press that, you don't have to be coordinated to push on everything to actually kill stall the combine. You tap it and it basically stops the combine when you're fully loaded, so you can go in the back end and look at everything. Fluid level check, this is a fun one. You're going to expect something magical here. Nothing's going to happen. You tap it and it tells you to get outside and check all your fluids. So nothing magical there, guys. So I thought it was going to tell me more than that. Then obviously we have everything else we went through there. Hydro handle, no different than what we've been running for years, okay? Anything in blue on the hydro handle is ran off the shift on the front. The difference is when we go in between 3 bushels and 6 bushels a second, what button are we hitting? Shift and what? Shift and cross auger shut off. This guy right here. So by doing shift and cross auger shut off, that's going to take you from 3 bushels to 6 bushels a second unload rate. But nothing on your hydro handle has changed. Still got your auto guidance engage here. This is your feed rate button, and this is your header resume here. And then header functions on there. If everybody knows, you can see this. This is the upside, the top of the button. It's an open circle. This is the bottom side with a closed circle. Where those symbols come in is when we start changing them, and I'll show you in this PowerPoint where you can change it so it operates like how John Deere hydro handle operates versus ours, or MacDon versus ours. You can switch that. So if you have someone that came out of the swather and they're really onto that and they want to change the combine, you can switch that. Or if you're coming from green combines, you can switch that as well. That's exactly what this is showing you here. With the solid circle with the arrow up means that that's going to move it up. And right where Quentin took you was right here where you went in and you played with it being pilot inverted or direct non-inverted. Okay, this is the world's best slide. A lot of stuff going on there. I know not everybody's going to read that. What I wanted to point out is it looks identical to everything we've ran in the past. So if you guys have ran a 8120 all the way up, everything is on here is the same, right? The only real difference is this button right here, this shortcut symbol. So by hitting that symbol, what it does is it takes you in the 1200 to that area. So obviously this is a picture of your rotor. So if you hit that, it would take you right to, on your 1200, into the rotor section. So it's no different than if you're running a 50 series sprayer where you have those quick buttons to get to someplace. This is on there as well. The right-hand top of the cab. So why I pointed this out, because there's a button that's missing if you're coming from a 50 series. What did we used to turn on a 50 series up here? GPS is one, and what's the other one I'm looking for? Automations. So automation isn't turned on anymore in the top right-hand side of the console. It's turned on in your monitor now. So that button is moved on all the AF combines. Okay, moving into automation. These are the 7 crops that it controls. Okay, obviously we're going to run these ones right here. The rest of these we're never going to run in Canada. So wheat, canola, and barley. Question is, does it need to self-calibrate? Yes, it does. You're going to pull into the field and you need to run the combine for, I believe it's 270 seconds for it to calculate a bunch of the information coming in so that automation can turn on and you can start making adjustments. Okay, so with that, here's the age-old thing that we've talked about over and over again, and we probably explained it to everybody 6 different ways. We used to say that we had to preset the combine ahead of time to get it close, and then we turned automation on. Well, all we did was waste a bunch of time because we set everything the way we wanted it. Then you turn automation on and it changed it all for you. Okay? So if you just set on to the factory settings and go from there, it's probably going to do the same thing. If there is something that isn't working properly, then maybe you could try adjusting it. But just start with your factory settings first and let it adjust from there. So what does automation all control? I guess, so you guys don't all have to yell out what it all controls. What does it not control? What's the one thing that automation doesn't control? Concaves. It doesn't control your concave clearance. Okay? So you still got to adjust your concaves to where you want it. So adjust your concaves to where you want it. Everything else automation controls. But what is that? That is your vanes. It's your rotor speed, your cleaning fan, your upper sieve, your lower sieve. So that's what it controls. So on your run screen of your 1200, you have a button right here. It is a quick button that takes you to your automation screen right here. This is where, by tapping on here, that's where you can turn on your automation right there. And this is where you can change your strategy as well. Okay? So just a quick button on the 1200. You would have the same button on your 700. If you didn't move it off your run one screen, you would have had the same button there. So like I said, this is where we can have it in manual. ACS is automatic crop settings or automation. And here's your strategies. So with strategies last year on the combine that we ran right here, we ran in performance. And what that did is that looked at grain loss first. And that's what it cared about, was limited grain loss. And then after that, everything else. But number 1 priority was grain loss. Grain quality. And then there is fixed throughput and max throughput. Speed first. But I would recommend performance would be the one you want to run. Or, I don't know, we tried testing with max throughput. I don't know. It's always trying to speed you up and run at the highest end and then make the adjustments, but performance seemed to work good for us last year. Target ground speed right here and target engine load, that is for your feed rate. And one thing we noticed last year running the AF11 around and demoing is the feed rate actually worked very well, because we had the extra horsepower to actually pull through the bottoms. And when we came into a low spot, it didn't just completely come to a stop. It had the extra horsepower to pull through the bottom and get all the way out to the other end of the low spot and keep going. So feed rate, I was very impressed with last year. And I know when Rob ran it too, it worked well. And the other locations, it really worked. And I'm sure the guys that demoed it out here noticed a huge difference from what the 50 series did to what the AFs did. So I would recommend running the feed rate. Basic tab, we already kind of went through that. Advanced tab here, this is where we can choose our settings. Our threshing condition, you always want to leave that at easy for starting. What that means, it has nothing to do with the crop you're harvesting. It just gives you the widest range for automation to work in. So if we think about it, easy gives you from 0 to 100. Let's use that as an example. If we go to medium, it only gives you maybe from 50 to 100 to work with. And if you go to hard, it only allows you to work at the top end of all your automation settings. So by going to hard, you're really not allowing it to have its full range of movement within automation. So leave that at easy. Then your adjust frequency and feed rate sensitivity here, that can be played with if you're noticing that you're not happy with how quick it's adjusting. Sieve load configuration, all that's doing is putting that little bar graph on your run screen that shows you your pressure on your sieves. So here, this is all our sensitivities, no different than tapping on the funnels on your main run screen. Why you'd want to come here is if you guys have multiple combines in the fleet and one guy's calibrated all the combines and you have one set really good, you could come in and kind of mirror the same settings. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to give you a really good start on that next combine, right? So you don't have to start from ground zero. You can come in and play with these sensitivities, but that's only going to work if all the sieves are set the same, right? Calibrated the same way and everything, concave clearance and all that. So that's why it's very important the same guy does it across the farm. One of the best buttons in automation, if it isn't working the way you want, hit the reset button. Just basically reset it. If you've given it too much information, hit the reset and you can kind of let it start right from scratch again, put in your sensitivities and start running it again. Headlands tab. How many people in here has ever used headlands? I would think probably, oh, you have? We have one today. So what headlands is, if no one knew, we've had it around forever, as long as the flagship combine's been out. If you hold your shift button on the front of your hydro handle and hit your header resume, what it'll do is lift your header all the way up to the highest point, and then you can have presets in there, so it slows down your cleaning fan, and it can open up your upper sieve and lower sieve. So when you're turning around in the headlands, you're not throwing out. That's what headland mode does. It's been on every combine, I think. I don't know if the 8010 had it, but 8120s had it, because I don't think the 8010 actually had the shift button on the front of the hydro handle. But it's been available all the way through. Ranges. So what we can do here is we can lock down our ranges as well and tell it that you only want each thing to work within a certain parameter or a certain range. But if you lock down your ranges across all of automation, you're basically not allowing it to fully adjust. So sometimes you have to just let it run, and it might do something completely different than you think it should be doing, but it might get you a way better result. But if it was slowing down your rotor, you could come in here and tell it, I don't want my rotor to go slower than a certain speed. And you'll lock it down, or I don't want it to go higher. Status tab, no different. It's just going to pick out everything. If there is an issue here in the status tab, it's going to say that the grain camera isn't communicating. You're going to know that there's something wrong with your automation. Adjusting the ranges, the info tab here. This is basically a screenshot out of the ops manual saying these are all the things and this is the settings that we have it set at. So these are your kind of initial settings where it's going to have everything set at. It's no different than what's in the ops manual. Last, grain loss. So I don't know, I know that when I was up at Choiceland last year with Winnie's, we used this calculator for multiple times until we figured out the issue. So this was the website I was using. This is right from PAMI in Humboldt. So if you take a picture of this, right here you put in your crop type, and it should bring in the correct density. What you need to input is your yield, what you think it's going, and your catch pan area. Then your cut width and how much is discharging. So with grain loss, I like to throw 3 pans, one on the right, one on the left, and one down the center. And then from there, you can actually tell where the grain loss is coming from, and then you can average it across. So you would add up all your square footage right here of your catch area, and you would clean it down so you can weigh it, and then you input it in there, and it'll actually tell you what your grain loss is. Our experience with the AF11 last year was grain loss was next to nothing. I think that the highest I saw, other than when I was with you guys, was 3/4 of a bushel. But when we were there, we had an issue where the back end of the sieve, the door wasn't closed. So it was throwing out until we figured out to close the back door, and then everything worked very well after that. But grain loss was great last year. It was something that everybody was very excited about. With this unit as well, we have the ability, which Chris Haubrick's going to come up now, and he's going to talk about field ops and remote support. But with this as well, the shop can tie in and push software over the air to these units. So, any questions on anything on the monitor? We'll be here around lunch and throughout to answer any questions. But if you have questions, come find us, ask questions.
All right. I don't know if you can see that. But, yeah, who here knows what field ops is and has used it in the past? A few of you? Okay. So if you don't already have it on your phone, I would recommend downloading this app. It looks like this. It's called Field Ops. We tap on that, log into your account here. So what Field Ops is a fleet management program that Case has released in the past year. It used to be called AFS Connect. Since they ran into their limit with that, they have released Field Ops here. So when you first log in, you'll get your overview, have your any active machines here, recent activities, if there were any, all your equipment, whether they're active or not, and the locations of them, and your fields. So within Field Ops here, we can look at a field if we wanted to, load any agronomic data, if it would work for me. There we go. So there we can do that. Now in your equipment here, we talked about remote display viewing. So if you wanted to do that, all you'd have to do is along the top here, you see a little kind of two squares on top of each other. We can tap on that and it will send a request to the Pro 1200. So if you have an operator in the cab there, they're unfamiliar with the monitor, it's pretty easy to just remote display in, and you can help navigate them through that without having to remember where everything is off the top of your head there. And that's the same that goes for us. If you have a tough time figuring out where something is, or you need help navigating, we can also do that for you guys as well while you're in the cab. So once that goes through its process, and there we go. So once we're remoted in, you will have this orange boundary here that will kind of tell you that you are remoted in. They will also have that boundary in there. You cannot interact with anything within the monitor there, but you can have a little pointer to help kind of point what you're wanting them to tap on, if you were wanting them to tap on something. And yeah, who here has used this feature before or knew that it existed? A couple of you? Yeah. It's a really handy feature there, especially when you have somebody inexperienced in the cab or anything like that. Any questions on remote display viewing? No? Okay. So I will kind of exit out of there and move on. So another useful feature that I like to bring up when doing these is the fact that you can see your settings in your combine, whether it's your yield, your on the web. I will show you more into like the concave settings, sieve settings, all that stuff that you can see while it's going up and down the field live. Any questions so far on that before I switch to the laptop? Okay, just gonna make the quick switch here. All right. All right, so when you first sign into your Field Ops account on your web here, you'll log into your overview. It'll have your active machines, recent activities, your CNH parts store if you wanted to look up parts, if you needed parts. Activities, this is go all your past activities, equipment, any equipment that's active, non-active, and your fields. So I'll be going over creating boundaries, swaths, sending them to connected machines. Anybody here use or sent boundaries before? Okay. So here I will go into the equipment and just show you the machine parameters and stuff that you can see. So if you go into your equipment, click on that, click on device, and then machine parameters, and then operation settings and status. Here we can see if your auto crop settings is enabled, concave, driving direction, elevator speed, all that. Your feeder options, your sieve positions. You can see all this live as it's going up and down the field. So you have somebody in there, you're unsure if their settings are correct, or you just want to keep an eye on them. It's a good way to do it. Your fields here. Click on that, and here you can also see any agronomic data that has come through. So we click on that, it'll give you your legend and your map here. So a useful tool, if you've been experienced and you've used this before, is you can also analyze the layer here. So you click Analyze Layer on the bottom. It'll bring up this little tab here. We can scroll in and say you want to see what's going on here in the little red area. You can draw a little box around that, zoom out, click Analyze, and it will give you a little box here that gives you what's going on inside that box that I drew versus what's going on outside. So your minimum bushels an acre, your average, your total, and the amount of acres that I had boxed off versus the total amount of acres that layer encompasses. So it's a good tool to use if say you had hail go through and you lost some yields in some area, or for whatever reason a part of your field didn't produce as much as you thought it would. You can see what your losses are there. We can exit out of that. Exit out of that. So, okay. So going back to boundaries here. I would say boundaries is the most important part of field ops. Without it, your data, your agronomic data will come in. However, it won't have anywhere to really display itself. So it needs that as it's geolocated and not grower farm field specific. So to create a boundary, it's pretty easy. You can go down here in your fields tab, click add. It's going to ask if you want to import your files. So if you have files from another program that you can export and then import into here, you can do that. Or if you want to go the manual process, you can also do that. So here's going to give you some options: grower, your farm, and your field. So whatever you want it named. Just name it test. And then here we can click draw. So within that, just the beginning of the year here, they added this feature here that's called auto detection tool. It uses satellite imagery to kind of judge the boundary of a field. So you don't really have to do as much manually anymore. So you see this, you can click on that, and it failed on me. Let's try this one. There. So it's by no means a perfect tool. You may need to do some adjusting, but it's a good start if you just want to have your data come in and viewable. That's one way to do it. You can also do it the old-fashioned way of clicking this and manually clicking around your boundary. So either way it works. And let's say you have you didn't want to use the auto detection tool, you just wanted to create a square around there just for the time being. So we can finish drawing, save that for now. We can adjust your boundaries based off of agronomic data. So let's say this field here, we can go hit the pencil, we can click edit, and down here we can go load layer. If we select that, once it loads, it'll load all your agronomic data that you've had in here. over the however many years you have agronomic data in here. And here we can find a layer that you like or think that best represents your field. And we can click on that, use that. Once that's loaded in, we can just click use layer, and then OK. And then there's your new layer. Your new boundaries right there. You save that. And here you have a bit more of an accurate boundary than you had in the past. So, any questions on boundary creation? Perfect. All right. So another useful tool that a lot of people find useful is creating swaths in here, or headings. So in here you can go to your setup, fields, swaths. You can hit the little plus button, and here you can name your swath whatever you want it to be. If you want it to be a north-south, you name it north-south. We can pick a field. We'll just pick that one. And the group. Although it says optional, I highly recommend selecting a group. This way, if you're creating swaths for your combine, when you go to export, you can just select your harvesting group, and you're not selecting your seeding swaths, your spraying swaths, and your harvesting swaths to send at one time. You can just select that. That way you know that your combines are getting the swaths specifically created for them. Here, and then it's going to ask for a lat long heading angle. We can ignore that and just go straight into drawing the swath here. So here, if we just put 2 points down, click done. Here's your swath. It'll give you your lat long. And if your heading angle wasn't 0, you could change that to 0. Or you could change that to 90 degrees if you want an east-west. And if I zoom in, changes that to an east-west. So if I save that. All right, so once that's saved, say you want to have this swath adjusted off of your boundary. So we can click back into that, edit that, and then we can go back into draw swath. And here the bottom left, you see the snap the swath to the nearest boundary. We can check that box, grab the little points that I have here, and it will snap to the boundary there. Once that's done, you can click done, and then below you have some more options here. So if we want to move it, say you have a 50-foot header, you're not going to use your headings when you're doing your headlands. So let's say you want to give a bit of a buffer there. So let's say 22 feet off the boundary. We want to adjust that to the right side. Here we can apply the shift. You zoom in. That is now 22 feet off of the right side of the boundary. Now with that, you're also going to have a heading angle that's pretty wrong. So we can change that back to 0. And there you have a swath that's slightly adjusted off of your boundary. So you can maximize your efficiency. We can save that. Ask if someone wants to override. Any questions on creating swaths, anything like that? Cool. All right, say yeah. Sorry? Yep. Yeah, you can do your zip shape if you have boundaries that you did with a Pro 700, 1200. You can export those out of the monitor and load those in as well. Yeah, so there are different ways of doing that. So yeah, if you have your, say your sprayer with a Viper 4, you can export the boundaries out of there, load those into field ops, and use those boundaries. Yeah, you're welcome. So say you have all of your boundaries done, your swaths done, and you're ready to send those to your equipment. The top right here, you have the send and receive files button, arrow pointing up and down with a little tray underneath it. We click on that and give you a few options: export, package, process status, and the file upload. If you had boundaries you wanted to upload, you can go into the file upload, And here you have some more options. So your CNH, that would be your Pro 700, 600 file type. ISO XML, that would be your Pro 1200. Raven job data, your field boundaries. So if you just had your shape files, you can load those in through here. And a few other options. If you are uncertain as to which one you need, you can just select your third-party data. And if I click on the supported formats, it will give you a list of what is supported and what it should bring in. So go through all of that. There's quite a bit of options there. We can cancel out of that. So if you wanted to export, we can just click export. And here it's going to give you some more options as well. Again, your CN1, if you wanted to export to your Pro 700, Pro 600. If you don't have a connected piece of machinery, you can still use this. It's just a bit of a more manual process for you. So you just leave it as download, so it downloads to your desktop. Then you would load it onto a USB stick and then load it onto the monitor that way. If you wanted to send it to the equipment, you just select send to equipment. So with this, we got a 1200. So I'll highlight the ISO XML. It's going to give you the file name here, which is just today's date and time. It automatically generates that. If you wanted to change that, you can. But I'll just leave it as is. So we'll send to equipment. We'll hit next. It's going to ask you your organization, which is just the field ops account that you're signed into. The equipment that you have in your account. Here we have the AF11, so we'll just keep that selected. And then next. Here it's going to give you some more options. So if you have multiple farms, say you got a few people that farm together, but you only want to send your farms to there, you can just select your farm, or you can have them all selected. Fields, it'll default to all. Say you have boundaries in your 1200 already, you got a new field, whether it's rented or owned, you can create that in field ops and then just send that specific field to your monitor. So we'll leave all that selected. Then here you have some more options. You want to include swaths, yes. And then it's going to ask your swath types. We can leave all that. That's okay. The swath grouping. That's the important one. It'll automatically select all, but we don't want to send our spraying swaths to our combines, so we'll just deselect all and then just select the harvesting. That way, your selected swaths is just the one that I had just made there. If I had left it to select all, you would see that there's a couple in here, but we don't want that. So we will just go to harvesting. Then I will go down and the boundaries, we can include that. We can add a buffer amount if we wanted to just kind of extend our boundary a little bit. Say with the sprayer, you kind of overhang in a ditch kind of thing. Inner boundaries, outer boundaries, we'll just leave all that. Then here we can hit next, and this will give you a rundown of everything that is being sent to the monitor. And we can go through each field and make sure that the boundary that we have selected looks proper. So with that, I will switch back to the monitor there. I'll remote display view. That way, when I hit finish and send it to the monitor, you'll know what that looks like. So I'll click finish here. So you'll get a little notification on your desktop when you send it. And then on your screen there, you'll have a little pop-up. And saying new data from the cloud. Do you want to go to your inbox? Yes or no? No. Now I'd imagine with the poor service that we have in here is probably not helping us. So any questions on sending and receiving files? you guys have no questions for me, I think that's about all I have for you. If you have any questions you want to talk to any of us after the fact, we'll be around. Don't hesitate to stop us and ask some questions. So with that, I guess we will wait for them to finish up with getting ready for lunch there.